Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada. On this episode, we decide the fate of the Last Starfighter.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Welcome to this week's edition of Ruined Childhoods. I am one of your co-hosts, Dan Wiener, and with me, as always, is...
Hey, it's me, John, and with us for the first time, not for us, but for this podcast, it's our other brother, Scott.
It's
me.
Scott,
you may be familiar
welcome to Ruined
with
Childhoods.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important that we kind of just one by one for our listeners, because when the three of us are talking, it might get a little confusing. So this is I am John. This is my voice. I hope that you can differentiate it from.
Hi, my name is Scott, and my voice is different from John's.
Yeah, and then there's...
Not to throw you off, but this is Dan, and my voice is, again, different.
Okay.
Similar, but different.
I know that this can happen, where people get confused with similar voices. So
Yes.
thank you for all going on that journey with me.
Yes.
And speaking of
Thank you.
journeys...
Okay.
We're talking about a movie where there's a journey to the stars.
Absolutely. A journey to the stars, a journey back to 1984 to The Last Starfighter.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned The Last Starfighter when we were talking about Weekend at Bernie's, because they both feature
Yes.
Catherine Mary Stewart.
Which one is she?
Mm-hmm.
She is Maggie / Mags.
Yeah, the girl.
I just want to make sure. I don't know these things.
Maggie.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Scott, even though we all grew up in the same house, Scott seemed to have a different relationship with all of the movies that we were watching. I guess he wasn't absorbing every last bit of information about them the same way that you and I were, Dan.
He watched them.
He was there.
I know the movies.
Yeah.
I loved the movies. I could quote them, I'm sure, but I don't know who these actors are.
Well, I think that to start off, Dan, why don't you tell the story about why we got so into The Last Starfighter?
Okay, so come back with me. Let's say, I want to say it was early 1985. So The Last Starfighter had been released on VHS. We went to our local video store, which Palmer Video. It was Palmer Video in Westfield, New Jersey. So classic. We went to Palmer Video.
Did you?
And you
Yeah, I
did
barfed
you did barf. You did barf there. Yeah. And so we rented a copy. Like, we had a VCR. We had this big, like, silver VCR. I remember I had it
The top
in my
loader,
dorm.
right? No, it wasn't.
It was
a top
not
loader.
a top loader. No, we
discussed this.
Scott and I had this conversation. Not a top loader. We never had a top loader, in fact. But we had this big silver VCR. I want to say the brand was Fisher, and
Right.
I remember in college, my friends used to call it, when they would watch movies in my dorm room, would call it, I had it there, and they called it the first VCR. So we rented a VHS copy of The Last Starfighter, and I don't recall if we had watched it once and the tape was still in the VCR, or if we went to watch it and prior to putting the tape in, someone who's co-hosting this podcast right now, that's not me, not this voice, one
could it
of
be
the
this
other
voice?
two voices, it was, I don't, this is where, I know it wasn't me, I don't know which one of you it could have been. Scott and John are about a year and a half apart, so very close in age, so it could have been either of them who stuck a toy into the VCR.
Twist.
If I had to guess, my suspicion, Scott, I'm sorry, but it would, I could see you being more of like, what would happen if I put this like into this machine? I could
First
see
he
you
barfs
having
in
that.
Palmer Video. Now he sticks a toy in a machine.
Listen, it wasn't
VCR.
the same day. I just want to make this
He,
clear.
he's also shown the same disrespect for cinema. I mean, at this point, that you were what, 3? So yeah, clearly no. I don't know who it was. Anyway, the point is, there was a toy in the VCR, and the tape got tangled. We were able to get the tape out, or perhaps we had to bring the VCR in. I think we had to bring the VCR in to Palmer Video, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mom. But
And she will.
yes. Oh yeah. No. So the tape was removed from the VCR somehow, and we had to pay for it. And this was back in the day when, like, unless it was something they were marketing, like an ET type movie, the new release on VHS cost like a copy of the VHS tape cost like $89.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this when I later on worked at Blockbuster and then Palmer Video, which became West Coast Video. But I remember seeing in the catalog like $89.99 for like a VHS copy, not like a case of them, a copy. So we had to pay a significant amount for that copy of The Last Starfighter. Now, the tape was put back into the cassette and everything, and you know, we watched it again. I don't know if it was one of those like we had nothing else to watch, or just we loved the movie that much that we were like, let's give it a shot. Hey, we already paid for it, so we watched it, and I remember like the beginning of the movie would be really staticky, like the opening credits and everything, like, and then it would kind of start to taper off at some point in Act 1. They're
still in the trailer park.
Before Alex goes to Rylos, before he beats the record, he
Busts the record.
Yeah, and he busts the record. Yes, thank you. Anyway, at some point, so the movie was watchable, and especially for us, all of us under 10, you know, of course it was rewatchable for us. It was fun. I was a huge Star Wars fan, right. And the storyline is similar. There's enough differentiation, but it's one of those movies that came out after Star Wars and after the success of Star Wars, so it kind of naturally appealed to me, and it involved video games and
right. And I think that's something that was very appealing about this movie was also that it was a regular person on Earth who then becomes this big space hero. It's not just like somebody on a distant planet where it's like completely unrelatable. It's like this just kid who lives in a trailer park and plays an arcade game all the time. Right.
But he's similarly kind of frustrated with his lot in life. Similarly has a lost father. We don't really know much about that, but
I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, there are enough similarities between Luke Skywalker and Alex Rogan, but Alex Rogan he's a trailer park kid. He's older brother, single mom. Everybody relies on him. It's not just his aunt and his uncle. So yeah, I feel I agree with you. Alex is a very relatable protagonist. Regardless of era, he's still a relatable protagonist.
Yeah, and for anybody who's unfamiliar with The Last Starfighter, the plot is that there's this kid who lives in a trailer park. Everybody relies on him for everything. He feels very stuck. Can't even like get out to go to college because doesn't get the loan or whatever. The student
he needs
loan.
a loan.
And but his one like source of escape is this arcade game that they have there called Starfighter. And one night he busts the record, as one of the trailer park residents says, which I love. I love how this movie doesn't, I don't know, there's like so many little twists, like things about it that make it stand out. What's up?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
First, I'm remembering Otis, who rallies everyone. Yeah. Otis, who he runs the snack bar in the trailer park. This trailer park, by the way, is a wonderful community, and everyone is incredibly supportive
Yeah.
of it. That's what Scott and I watched it
Yeah.
very recently, and like that was one thing we were like, this looks like such a great place to live, and it
Right.
really it puts a really positive spin on a trailer park and makes it a really appealing community
Yeah.
whereas that's not always the presentation.
Yeah, the Starlight Starbright Trailer Court, I believe they call it.
Well endorsement
Starlight
from this
Starbright.
show.
I know, yeah.
But-
So check out the Starlight Starbright Trailer Court for your next living adventure.
But getting back to the plot of this,
right?
so the night that Alex
Busts the
right.
record.
So the night that is also, so he busts the record and he's at the highest of highs. That's the same night he finds out he doesn't get the loan because his mom comes home from working at the diner, and the guy from the bank like gives her this letter, and so Alex gets really excited. He's thinking he got the loan, and he doesn't get the loan. So he's at the lowest of lows. It goes from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows within minutes.
Well, then back to the highest of highs when he busts the record.
Well, no, he has already busted the record.
Oh, he has already busted the record. Right,
Yes.
but then he is visited by...
Yes.
We're not going to give every single bit of information
No.
about the movie. We don't have the time for that. But he is visited by a man who's in a very interesting space car. Looks an awful
star
lot like
car.
Star car looks an awful lot like a DeLorean, but this came out before Back to the Future, so...
Truth.
saying.
And it was based on the DeLorean, but yeah, this came out a year before Back to the Future. So
Yeah. So it's this man who developed the arcade game Starfighter as a recruitment tool to defeat Zur and the Kodan Armada. So he's... I don't want to...
He's not really a man. He's recruiting for this Star League using this thing appropriately called the Excalibur test.
Right.
So yeah, which it is based on that idea.
Right.
Of, intentionally based on the idea of Arthur and the Sword in the Stone.
Sword in the Stone. Right. So, long story short, a lot of things happen. But basically, he goes off, he joins the Star League, and he is kind of their one last hope to defeat Zor and the Kodan Armada.
Yeah.
He is the last Starfighter.
Things happen that lead to him being the last Starfighter. He's teamed up with this wise old experienced mentor, Grig.
Yeah.
What does he call him? A gung-ho iguana?
Yes. Which, it's so great. I love the writing of this movie. There's just like those little moments in there where it just kind of like... I've never heard... I don't know, the kind of wordplay. Also, this movie has great sound design.
Right.
Like, that's very unique to this movie. Like...
Yes. The
It's-
sound, the theme. It's got a great theme.
Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, it's
Dun,
It's
dun,
wonderful.
dun, 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 dun.
and it's definitely very like John Williams inspired, but like
Yeah.
it works on its own.
You could pick worse people to take your inspiration from.
Well, yeah, I mean it is trying to be a bit of a Star Wars, not
Yeah.
it's not like trying to emulate it exactly, but it's taking a lot of hints from it.
Yeah. It's definitely modeled in that, as were a lot of other movies to come out before that. And,
Right.
like things before Star Wars. So,
Sure. Well, also, I think it's actually the movie that, in the ranking of the year 1984, beat out The Last Starfighter by 1 point as Starman. So, like, there's this space thing that's happening
Yeah.
in the early to mid 80s where it's just like it's
well,
happening.
yeah. Dune.
Dune. Right?
Dune. The Terminator was 1984, 2010.
Right.
The year we make contact. Star Trek 3 was in the top 10 that year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, you're definitely there. We're definitely in that post Star Wars. We had Star Wars and then Star Trek the motion picture like the year after.
Right.
So, yeah, everyone's grabbing for those sci-fi bucks.
Yeah. Scott, I remember as a kid, you were, I feel like, more into sci-fi stuff than Dan and myself. Am I Am I right there?
I love space.
You love space. Do you have any, I guess, things that you remember about The Last Starfighter that ticked with you? Because I know that this isn't just a movie that Dan and I loved. You definitely
I was
were
way into this movie. Come
Yeah.
on. When Dan and I watched it the other day, I was right back in it. It's like I had just seen it like a week before. And we were talking about how many times we've probably seen it.
Oh, my God.
20 times, maybe?
Well,
Being realistic for me.
for you, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You guys probably
That's a
30.
high number.
20
That's
is
a high
a lot.
number
For
you.
any movie, yeah.
I'll say this. What I really remember about loving this movie was the trailer park business we were talking about before. Love that it's just like our house. We didn't have video games.
Right.
Like we had the Commodore 64, and then I think nothing else. Our parents wouldn't let us
We
get
had the
Nintendo.
VIC-20, then the 64, and no, that was prohibited. in
Yeah.
the-
So I think seeing this guy with a video game thing was kind of cool.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he had an arcade game at his disposal. That
Sure.
was
That was the dream.
yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things that I think we all really enjoyed about this movie was his little brother, Lewis,
Oh, Lewis.
who's like,
Lewis was
you could easily write off Lewis, but he was just so wonderfully portrayed. I don't even know the actor's name. Do you have it on hand?
We looked it up.
yeah,
Dan looked it up. He's a school teacher now.
well, since the last update to like what he's doing was 2002. So his name was Chris. His name is Chris Hebert. Hebert. So Chris Hebert, if you're out there and you hear
Give
this,
us a shout, man.
email runechildhoodspot at gmail.com. Yeah.
Great performance.
Yeah.
He
Great
really
character.
he did some TV in the 80s, but like everything, I don't know if the writer knew him and wrote these lines with him in mind, if they worked on dialogue together, but he's so natural, and it's that perfect bratty little brother where he's still likable.
Yeah. I don't know about the word bratty for him.
He's Brad.
I mean, he shoots a dart gun at the old lady next door, like Granny.
His introduction in the movie is walking around in the space helmet.
That is true.
And what is he?
I'd call him precocious.
Well, he is, and the movie, spoiler alert, the movie ends with Lewis standing at the Starfighter machine.
Right. Yeah.
So, which I can only imagine was meant to lead to some sequel.
The thing is, like, this movie sets itself up so easily for a sequel.
They
It
must have known
sets
that.
up a
I mean,
lot.
they did that on
It
purpose.
sets up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But
Yeah.
And I'm gonna use the word famously, but it's only famously in the world of cult movie fanatics.
Yeah.
But famously, the writer of this movie, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but he has stated
Jonathan Butel, Beutel.
Yeah, Butel, right? Well, anyway,
think that's
he
how you
has
pronounce it.
famously said that this movie is great on its own and doesn't ever need to be revisited.
Ooh.
And that's kind of been the stance, and that's the reason why, even though there have been a lot of talks about any kind of remake or sequel or anything, I mean, and you can look it up online, it goes back like pretty far, and nothing has happened. There's been rumors about things happening, but nothing has ever happened. And I don't know. I think that it is kind of a shame.
I mean, I thought that I had read that he had intended on working on a sequel. So I'm we know, of course, there was a musical adaptation in 2007.
Yeah, there was an unofficial musical adaptation. There was I think it was, well, there was definitely a novelization of the movie, as there was that was pretty common then. There was a novelization, and then there was also a 3-part comic book series released by Marvel, which puts The Last Starfighter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe should we revisit it.
Really?
Well, I mean,
They're right.
Wait, Marvel.
They're
released
right
a
there
book-
with Bill and Ted.
they're right there with Bill and Ted. Well, Marvel did do a lot of comic book adaptations of movies
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
The Marvel the Marvel cinematic adaptation universe, maybe.
yeah, oh my god, the Last Starfighter was released by Universal, so I don't think that it could. I don't know who owns what rights or whatever. Yes.
So it was initially. So it was produced by Lorimar, whose
Right.
logo is still on the film, and then
Burned on my brain.
Burned onto your brain. Were they also not responsible for Transylvania 65000?
Oh, I don't know.
Find out next episode.
Yeah, right.
Possibly. So, yeah, I'm trying to. So it was Universal released it, and the Universal logo, like the VHS copy we had, was MCA Universal. Even the logo on the Blu-ray I have, which is the 25th anniversary from 2009, has a Universal logo. But I caught it on, I want to say HBO a few years ago, and it had a Warner Brothers logo on it.
Really?
So Warner Brothers may have the rights. Yes, and I remember reading something about that that Warner Brothers had picked up either, I don't know if it was TV rights or I don't know. I can't find it in the IMDb trivia.
That'd
I
be
could go further.
pretty
but-
niche bit of information. But
Yeah.
I still don't think that it puts it in the right people's hands to implement
No.
it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No, no. I mean, we're trying to make something fit that just isn't going to work. So
Well, how great would it be if, like, we're in Avengers Endgame or something, and then all of a sudden a Death Blossom happens, and that's just what saves everything?
So Alex Rogan comes in and destroys, kills Thanos, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Lewis. I don't know.
I'm imagining like
Alex
a
is a
Guardians
little
of the
long in the
Galaxy,
tooth by this point.
like maybe a Guardians of the Galaxy Last Starfighter crossover.
Hey, man.
I don't. No, no. I do have some thoughts regarding possibilities.
Oh, do you now?
Yeah, if I didn't, this would be a bad podcast for me to host. So, yeah, no, I mean, of course, and I want to put out the disclaimer that I think with most of these, we would say the best option is, of course, no option, and let it be what it is. So,
I think
correct me if I'm wrong.
I'd agree with you in most cases, but
In most cases,
I don't know
But-
if I agree with that for this particular movie.
Ooh.
okay, all right,
Should
hear
I?
what you
Shall
have to
I
say.
go? I mean, I feel like
yeah.
at the end of this movie, as satisfying as it is, with Alex and Mags, they're going up back into the ship and going with Greg to go fight more
What-
injustices around the universe. What's up?
What does Otis say at the end when is they're going to be
This
talking
baby
about
really
this
packs a
place?
punch?
Well, he says a lot at the end. So
Yeah.
he
Oh yeah, they're going to be talking the place where
Maggie,
Alex and Maggie went to the stars.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's
a
so,
big deal.
Yeah, as satisfying as that is, we also do have the moment where Lewis is at the machine. We also doesn't Zor get away?
Oh, Zor escaped.
He does get away.
Yeah, so Zor is on the loose. Lord Krill is gone. We know that because of that really awesome moment where he goes, "We die."
We die.
Awesome.
That was all three voices.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it leaves it so wide open, and it's kind of just like there's unfinished business in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, here we are 35 years later. And I mean, at this point, Lewis is in his 40s. Certainly, there's no way that he is not part of the Starfleet or what I forget the Star League. What do they call
Star
themselves?
League.
Star League.
Star League.
I
He
did
could not be a part of it.
What's that?
He could easily not be a part of it.
I don't know. He was pretty dedicated to becoming part of it.
But I think more interesting storyline is that he can't be a part. Like he's not good enough, And Dan and I were talking about this the other day, how he's like living in the shadow of his older brother who went off to the stars, and like maybe Zor comes and he's like, yo, you're pissed at Alex. Come with me.
See?
Team up.
This is what I'm talking about.
Or
This is...
yeah, I mean, I'm imagining Lewis running the Starlight Starbright trailer park. It's no longer
As a theme park. No, seriously, because like this is the place where there was a close encounter of the third kind.
Well, here's another point.
A mini golf course. I could see that space used as a mini golf course.
Well, here's another thing to think about is like, what if nobody outside of that trailer park even knows that any of this happened?
None of them believe them.
Because like there's no evidence that there was this intergalactic war aside from what
they even
these
refer to the radar.
Yeah.
They even refer
We can't
to,
hold
like,
off the radar.
Yeah. By the way, it occurred to me watching it this last time and thinking about what Oda says. I have never been under the assumption that this news grew out of there. I mean, maybe Starlight Starbright is real, like, maybe even though we see it as this blissful paradise because we see it through the eyes of the people who live there, but maybe it really is to everybody else. All the crazy people at the trailer park must have gotten really drunk and thought they saw a UFO and an alien.
That's
or
totally
what if at the beginning of this movie, while Alex is like helping repair stuff, he knocks something over and the whole trailer park has like a carbon monoxide leak, and they're all just like in a coma, imagining that this is happening.
No, here you go. So Lewis, we open up on it's Lewis. He's in his trailer, and on the walls we see some taped up, maybe like articles from the National Enquirer, maybe articles from tabloids from 1984 about alien encounters, and they show like Mrs. Boone's picture on the cover, and so you see, like, you get to see some of the people. Of course, most of these people are no longer with us to reprise their roles.
Granny.
But so you'd get some glimpses. Yeah, so you'd get some glimpses, but it would show that like the MSM mainstream media never took this seriously, and it was just reported in tabloids. We as the viewers know that this actually happened, but we just see that it's kind of like it's almost like this is as famous as Lewis gets, and like that's one of Lewis's last lines. You hear that, you slimes, I'm famous. But he can never. But yeah, so he can never he could stand. Maybe he just drops out of high school and stands at that machine, trying to get better. And he's since dropped out of high school.
Well, let's also be honest. Lewis has a podcast somewhere talking about weird conspiracy theories.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he talks about alien. Yeah.
I also feel
that's
like,
a great idea.
and Scott, I don't know if you watched this, but Dan, I believe you watched Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like he's like
Sure
Dr.
did.
Jacoby, just like in a shed somewhere, spray painting shovels and just like
I was
recording
thinking
weird, essentially podcasts.
That might be a little far out for a Last Starfighter sequel. I was thinking along the lines of something much less artsy. Have you seen the film 2012? Noah Emmerich.
Yes.
Woody Harrelson's character, who lives in a trailer and has a podcast about the end of the world, and it's not a podcast because it was 2010 when the movie was made, I think. So.
Right.
But that's kind of what I'm thinking is
I don't
Lewis.
remember that movie all that well, but yeah.
I remember, Woody Harrelson was my favorite part of it. And I remember Woody Harrelson was like this, nut who had this, radio show and would talk about end of the world conspiracy theories, and then they get him. Anyway, that's what I'm imagining Lewis being. And maybe he's in his trailer, he's playing his PlayStation 2 version of the Starfighter game. Maybe it's just like still out there. Or I like the idea of just having the arcade game sitting there.
Well, here's something interesting about the arcade game is like Alex has beaten the game. He has then, I mean, there's really I don't know if there's really a record to bust at this point.
It's the constant sting of Alex's initials coming up and flashing on the screen every time he walks up to that machine.
Oh, man.
It could be it. Well, because now that
Of
Alex
course.
has left, maybe Lewis has to take care of the trailer park.
Yeah.
And, like somebody's got to fix the electricity and whatever.
And Zur gives him an escape.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I like Zor recruiting Lewis.
I like so there's that idea. There's the bitter Lewis, or there's also it doesn't necessarily have to be overtly Zor. It could be a
A disciple
Zor,
of Zor.
or a disciple of Zor, but pretending to be like a Centauri type figure.
Oh.
And mimicking that and saying, like, maybe now Zor is using whether it's the Starfighter game, or maybe they've now produced talk about VR games. We talked about VR games with Groundhog Day.
Right.
I feel like Last Starfighter, and for that matter, Bill and Ted would be much better VR games than a Groundhog Day game. But imagine, whenever,
Yeah.
like whenever you're setting this, like maybe you're setting it in 1994 and Alex has been gone for 10 years, and like you're going to get a different actor to play Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most likely, I don't know if the original actor from The Last Starfighter is ready to give up his teaching career and come back. So, but I had some other thoughts.
Of course.
I had a reboot idea. So this is what we've been talking about is kind of more of a sequel that picks up however many years later, and like picks up the story from the original. My reboot idea is, and it would still involve if Lance Guest, I'm pretty sure Lance Guest is working, and Catherine Mary Stewart is working. So I mean, ideally you'd have them come back, but you would have Alex recruiting, and maybe you'd have some kid who comes across. I mean, maybe it's a kid who lives in the Starbright trailer park. Maybe there's no other real connection, or maybe it's just someone who stumbles upon it in like one of these retro arcades that's popping up all over the place. You find a lot of old video arcades that are now, they're, as to quote Harry Shearer from A Mighty Wind, they're nowtro. They were retro, now they're nowtro. So you also have home video games that are Xbox, PS4, whatever fictional video game system you come up with. There's so many possibilities of rebooting the story without repeating the original.
It sounds like you're still talking about more of a reboot thing, or is that just like it just kind of uses that technology rather than an arcade game, or did you have more on that? Because I don't know if either of you guys have seen the show on Hulu called Future Man. Anybody?
Oh, I have. I have. I saw the first couple of episodes. Yeah.
It's about this guy who like beats this video game, and it is a recruitment tool, and these people are sent from the future to bring him back to to help them stop with what's eventually going to be the end of civilization. And he even says, "Oh, it's the Last Starfighter," and they're just like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's the movie," and they're like, "What's a movie?" Yeah.
Oh, and that reminds me, and Scott and I had talked about this a little bit as well. Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Which the book references The Last Starfighter, but the book, there's a lot of variation between the book and the movie. Have either of you read the book Ready Player One?
No. I saw the movie and it was no bueno.
Right. Well, because it should be a very difficult book to adapt, but I feel like the story of the book is meant as an homage to movies like The Last Starfighter and to the 80s in general. But yeah, the movie took it and I think made a lot of missteps, but we're not here to talk about Ready Player One. I just feel that, and unfortunately the story, like the plot is so similar that a reboot does run the risk of.
It's kind of like already been done with different properties. And I really did love the way that Future Man did what they do and just like completely drew attention to everything. Because also Future Man, it's produced by Seth Rogen, and he's one of the people who was always rumored to be rebooting The Last Starfighter or revisiting The Last Starfighter. So I wonder if that was kind of his way of paying homage to it, but not actually doing it because maybe it's still just complicated legally to actually make that happen.
Yeah, I don't. So Scott, what do you think if Hollywood, if the powers that be were going to be doing something with The Last Starfighter, what as a fan, what would your preference be?
Well, I definitely know prequel is out of the question because there's nothing interesting.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do have a prequel idea.
I love it. Dan's ideas are always so bonkers.
I have a little bit of a prequel thought, not a full-fledged idea, but go ahead.
Well, okay. I'm looking forward to hearing these. I don't think prequel makes sense because I think all the interesting things happen with this video game being beat. So I think sequel, well, I don't want anything to happen because I love that it has loose ends. And I love the idea of like a movie that you don't know. Like there are other things that your imagination can deal with. But if you absolutely had to do something, I think sequel makes the most sense. I don't need to reboot
Zura
this.
is still out there, Scott. Aren't you terrified?
Well, but the thing is, I am terrified. But I like that terror is what drives me. And I don't want to have that end, you know? Like I don't need a reboot of this. I don't need it to like, oh, we have it with VR masks and like the same thing happens. Whatever, boring. I would love to see what happens next in like a world where it's twisted around where Lewis is some. Yeah, I love thinking about him in the basement making podcasts.
Yeah.
Love it.
By the way, Dan, you're in a basement right now, so
I am. Well, I don't know if you'd consider this a basement or a first floor, but I'm in the
you have a
downstairs
window to
area
the
of the
outside.
house.
yeah, that's true.
He has a
I do.
It's debatable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're on the third floor.
That's true. So
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying
I
you
think
like
sequel-
the idea of Lewis, if there was to be anything at all.
Yeah. I like the idea of years later what had happened and it not being the thing that you would think would happen, which is that he's at the video game, he becomes the next to Last Starfighter, you know, like an easy continuation. I think a more difficult continuation is better, where it's all on Earth, but like something is happening, but Lewis maybe can't convince everybody because they think everybody at the trailer park is garbage.
And then are you down with the Lewis gets recruited by Zur?
Yeah,
Somehow,
I'm
some
way
way?
down with that. Way down with that. It's got to be subtle though. It can't be Zur with the same haircut.
But that
Right.
haircut's
No.
so
I
iconic.
think-
Everyone on that planet just has this crazy hairline.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear the ideas behind that. What's the concept? Everyone in it looks like, kind of look like Mr. Sadowski from Hillside Avenue
Our gym
School.
teacher
All right,
from
guys,
high
that
school.
was a
Well,
little
especially-
too specific for
Yeah,
our
wow.
podcast audience.
Very specific, but anyway, but they have that hairstyle.
It's a very specific look. Dan, what was your idea for a prequel?
Well, and my idea for a prequel, so I would see this being, so if you have a sequel and it's successful, and that sequel kind of becomes that, all right, now we're going to have a new Starfighter franchise. If a franchise will build out of it, I could see it, not to like copy Star Wars, but there's a really interesting story that we don't get a lot of information on, and that is what happened between Zur and his father who we assume is the Emperor of Rylos, or the leader of Rylos, possibly not an emperor, but we know that the Kodan Emperor has entrusted Zur with their armed forces, presumably to break the frontier and invade Rylos, which I guess is where Starfleet is headquartered.
Yeah.
Space Force? Starfleet? What?
Space Force.
Space Force.
Yeah,
We're going to have a frontier
Yeah.
too. I mean,
What's that? Yeah. How did that relationship sour?
I think that's
What?
pretty interesting. Maybe it's just a drama.
But wait. It's a parallel story. At the same time, you're seeing the story of Alex and his father having the reverse split.
Interesting.
So
That's my
Zur,
other-
the younger, is like the rebel and I'm getting out of here. Alex's father does the same thing. I'm getting out of here.
Rogue Rogan.
Yeah,
Oh.
but you see what I mean? Like it's a parallel story on
Oh,
Earth and on Rivals.
maybe. No, seriously. Maybe, though, he's an ex-military pilot, and in the early 80s, it's not unbelievable that he would have been a military pilot in Vietnam, perhaps, and would have come back from Vietnam, a changed person.
Dan,
And maybe...
Dan, you just want a reason to put credence in a movie. Let's be honest.
I don't need a reason to put Creedence in a movie. All right.
Wait,
There's a Creedence song for every occasion. The beginning of the Twilight Zone movie features Creedence.
Oh my God.
Okay.
where is the Starlight Starbright trailer park? What I'm asking is, how close is it to Area 51?
Well, I believe it's Southern California, but
I always took it to be Southern California, but it's not specified.
it's not specified.
Nevada.
I don't know. We'd have to look at license plates.
Oh. All right.
I don't think.
All I'm thinking
I
is,
don't think there's definitive license plates. I don't.
Well,
On
but
the
there's like
truck?
the
I feel like
trucks that the friends have and stuff. So that's the only thing.
But
that
I feel like
say
we
is
would
an
have noticed
indicator.
that.
after being a fighter pilot, Vietnam, Area 51. There you go.
Well, something that I was thinking would be an interesting thing to I guess revisit as a prequel would be Young Centauri. Because when we meet him and we see him back on Rylos, everybody looks at him as just kind of like a swindler.
Yeah.
And kind of just
Give
like a
me the
jerk.
money, Centauri.
Yeah, like he's not regarded as like a awesome guy.
He's
but
not
like
part of their thing.
Yeah, but
he's a charming con man.
but he actually ends up developing the thing that brings in the figure that saves them. So
But it's
He knows how many cool jewels
It's
he would
Han
make
Solo?
from that.
no. I was going to say it's no accident that it's Robert Preston who played the role of I want to say Henry Hill, but that's the guy from Goodfellas.
and King of the Hill.
Hank
No,
Hill, yeah.
he the
Propane
lead
and
in
propane
the
accessories.
film version, the film The Music Man,
Man, yeah.
where he played a charming con man who comes to town trying to sell everyone these instruments, and he ends up being a good guy at the end,
Yeah.
like
Well,
Centauri.
I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't know, but the thing is, like, this could easily get into the territory of the Star Wars movie Solo, where it's just
Yeah.
like, oh boy, did we really need to see that? And yes, it's like fun. It's a fun adventure movie, but like nobody really cared about how he met Chewbacca. Whereas like, so for Centauri, I mean, I think that I would be curious to see what triggered all of this that's come up to make him develop this game. How he developed a video game also. How did he do that?
I don't need to see that.
I don't need to see that, but like I'm curious to know about Young Centauri.
It's like it's not a popular enough movie for anybody to care that much about that detail.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I do care about Alex and his father. I do care about Zor and his father.
Yeah, but at the same time, you could have Centauri just like in the background tinkering with some.
The point of this
gadgetry.
podcast, though, is kind of how do we, what ideas are possible and what could we make, what could work rather than just being a crappy remake. And I think so. What you have in the backstory of Centauri is there is a relationship with Grig
Right.
in the past, and he even says, "Oh, up to your old Excalibur tricks again." So there's stuff has happened in the past, and it doesn't just have to be Centauri's story. It could involve Grig.
Yeah. Which I also just want to point out, and I'm sure that you guys noticed this when you watched it recently, but like when they're flipping through Grig's like family photos, which are amazing, by the way.
The
It's
Griglets.
essentially an
There's only 4
iPhone or
photos.
an Android phone. We're just flipping through the photos.
Is exactly what Scott said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love that because I did not watch it recently. It's funny that you mentioned how when we were kids we watched this VHS tape where the first like 20 minutes of it were just so staticky, and
Well, until we watched it so many times, we straightened the tape out.
oh yeah. But like I didn't rewatch it the other day because I don't have my Blu-ray copy where I live right now. But I do have a DVD copy, and I was like, I'm not going to watch that. That's such crappy quality. I'm not going to watch that one. And to think about how many times I probably watched it where it looks like it was probably run through a trash can before it entered the first VCR. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yes.
as you can all hear, we love this movie. And like, yeah, it would be fine if nothing ever happened with this again. But like, I don't know. It just makes me happy to think about what would happen.
Who would you cast as young Centauri?
Oh my God. That's a really good question. Who would you go for?
Hugh Jackman.
No.
Whoa.
No?
No.
I think Hugh Jackman would have a lot of fun with that. No? Why
First
not?
of all, Hugh Jackman is probably the same age as like Robert Preston when he was Centauri. Maybe a little younger, but probably not too much younger.
I think he's a good 15 years younger.
I mean, granted,
Robert
Hugh
Preston
Jackman,
died the year after this came out.
I would probably
Granted of lung cancer, but like
I would like Michael Sheen.
Who's that?
okay, so Michael Sheen has played Tony Blair in anything where anyone has played Tony Blair.
Okay.
So Michael Sheen is Hollywood's official Tony Blair. Michael Sheen he's in Good Omens,
Here,
the
I'll show you
upcoming
a picture.
adaptation.
Show me a picture.
Yeah, you'll know him when you see him.
This is
He's
the part of every
in-
podcast where I have to look things up myself.
He's very prolific. I'm looking up. Yeah, so Robert Preston.
Okay, yeah.
So Robert Preston was 64 when he made The Last Starfighter, and I'm looking up to see how old
He
Jackman
died
is.
right after.
Yeah, this is his last
He died.
movie.
I mean, he smoked like his entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could still sing and dance.
I could see Mark Ruffalo being a young Centauri.
Mark Ruffalo, I could see generally doing most things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So Hugh Jackman is, let's see, 51.
Okay. So
He's 50. Just
Got
turned
it.
50 in October.
you're pretty close with your estimation. But
That was and that was total estimation there.
I feel like Hugh Jackman is just a little too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You need someone more
Yeah.
subtle.
You need someone more subtle.
I see it. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So Michael. I thought you were gonna say Michael Shannon. But
Well, look,
You love him.
Look, I'll put Michael Shannon in anything as any character. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But I don't think that he'd be right for this. I could see him as like young Zor, but he was also Zod. So I don't know. if I
yeah,
would
you
do
can't.
that.
You can't go from Zod to Zor, and yeah, no. Doesn't. Yeah, who would be a good young Zor?
That's a
Maybe like Ben Whishaw.
which one is Ben Winshaw? Oh, but you made me think of Ben Foster.
Who are all
I could
these
see Ben
people?
Foster
No,
as
oh.
a young Zor.
Ben Foster's crazy. He's awesome. Have you seen Hell or High Water?
Yes. Also, I love how Scott is
Great
just
flick.
the voice of the audience right now, being like, "Who the hell are these people?"
Yeah, I think you're making things up. Is this like someone you went to college with?
Okay. I'm just Googling pictures of these people so that Scott can see who they are.
Who are you looking up? That's someone we
Here's
went to
Ben
college with?
Foster.
All right. Oh yeah, he could do it.
Yeah. Scott has given us permission to
Yeah, he can
cast
do it.
Ben Foster as Zor, who is just like always a good bad guy.
Yeah.
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 He's just
he's a
like
great actor.
slimy and always up to something.
Well, Zor is that character. He's so weak. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just nothing but slime.
Yeah.
He's
My-
a whiny
my-
little piece of crap.
My favorite aspect of Zor is his ability to spontaneously rhyme. What is it when he says about the Rylans? He says what like a city full of weak wills not ready to be our equals.
Wow.
No one recognizes that. No one and no one
Eminem
stops and
as a
is
young
like,
Zor?
So should we just go ahead and assume that his speechwriter is Stephen Miller?
except he's trying to break through the frontier rather than
Rather than build
it.
a frontier.
Yeah. All right. Stephen Miller has kind of a Rylan haircut, though.
He kind of does.
He's got like the black Rylan. What? Could I mean, maybe that could maybe he could avoid prison time by being Zor or something. I don't know.
Oh my god. Oof. All right.
Yeah, no.
We gotta get away
No,
from
we
that.
want an actor. Who else? You know who else I was thinking?
I love the idea of like maybe young Zur being a poet, but his father is disapproving of his
And
choices.
that's why he goes into Frontier
So he
Destroyer.
does-
going to be
so
a
he-
starfighter, whether you like it or not.
So he gets sent to military school in Alaska, like Bill and Ted.
That's where he gets his. That's where he gets his first scepter.
Oh, okay. What? Okay.
Yeah.
What is the deal with the scepter? Why does he need to have the like sword that comes?
I think
out
it's
of
just
it?
showing that he needs to have an object because he has no actual power himself.
It's not like he ever really uses it.
We could get Freudian
hit the one guy
about
in the
it.
face.
He hit the one guy in the face, but he didn't use the like sword part
Oh.
of it at all.
He uses it as intimidation. He hits the. It's like a switchblade. It's kind of like his switchblade. He does it to like show like he's tough. That's what because that's the one time he flashes it. He's like, look at this, bam! It's not just. A
Well,
scepter.
also, don't
Kill
get me
you.
wrong. I'm not complaining.
I
I'll
love
just
how many
say
open
it.
ends
No.
there are. Like they just bring the scepter in. It's the most important thing, but there's no reason for it to
Yeah,
be. I love
pretty
it.
much.
Well, but they take it from him when so maybe the scepter was entrusted to him by the emperor of the Kodans.
Oh yeah.
Could be.
Because they do try to take it from him, but yeah, that could be explored in his past. But then again, I wouldn't go out of the gate with a Zur based prequel. I would do if I was running the studio, and it's people our age making these choices, but like
Yeah, right.
I would go with that sequel, that long awaited Last Starfighter sequel, where maybe we pick up with Lewis and we pick up with Zur, and then if that's successful, you go back and the Starfighter presents a Starfighter film or Starfighter Legacy or I don't know.
What ended up happening with the beta unit? Did it get destroyed?
The beta unit, rammed
Okay.
Jack Blake's truck
Right.
into the
And it blows up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The
I just wanted to make
Zandazan's
sure we
pod.
weren't thinking of any other characters that are still out there.
No other loose ends. No other beta units that we know of.
Yeah. By the way, the beta unit was so great.
He did an amazing job. I always thought it was a different actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, so they did a lot. Most of the beta unit stuff is done in reshoots, and he was kind of sick, so he had lost a bunch of weight, and he had cut his hair for another role, so he had to wear a wig, and it
That
works.
explains so much.
It works so well because it's a close but not perfect copy of a
Yeah,
person.
the hair is totally different.
The fact that it's just slightly off, really, I think makes it work even better.
Yeah, he does look
But
different.
the hair,
Yes.
the hair, he looks like a doll. He
Yeah.
looks like it looks like doll hair.
Yeah.
There's that one
It's
scene where
great.
he has that like a really long neck.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. I mean, this
His
has
neck
nothing to do
grew,
with
yeah.
this has nothing to do with revisiting it in terms of reboots or sequels and stuff. Just kind of saying how great that was.
Well, and how great! I mean, Lance Guest, who went on to star in Jaws: The Revenge,
Oh yeah,
and then his career got swallowed with the shark. But he gives such a great performance in The Last Starfighter.
he's
both
he's
the
just
beta
really
unit and
charming.
Alex.
He's really charming. He's just extremely likable. You root for him. You feel for him when he doesn't get the loan to go off to school. You totally buy his relationship with Mags. Like, it all just works. And it'd be great to, I don't know, see that character again,
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
I'd
Now-
go see it.
I think that, does anybody have anything else to say about The Last Starfighter? Or can we move on?
Yet I always do, but we can move on.
For the sake of this podcast, I mean, we'll talk about
Any
this
more
later.
crazy bonkers ideas, Dan?
About The Last Starfighter, let me see. Oh yeah, I was in my if we did a remake
Crossover
world,
with like Mannequin 4.
No, I haven't thought about that yet, but yeah, I was just like kind of questions about how more questions about Zur's past, and Yeah, I really don't have a lot more to say about it. I agree with you. The remake reboot idea is probably not the best way to go. The sequel's the way to go, and God willing, it makes enough money so we can see Zoor's backstory.
You got big dreams,
Zorian
Dan.
saga.
So Dan, do you want to tee up what we have going on in the next episode?
So for our next episode, we are speaking of Lance Guest's career and sharks. We are going to be getting into the water with Jaws, talking
That's right.
about
Wow.
the Jaws, Jaws, the classic that became a franchise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there are ever if I'm not sure what talks there have been about reviving it, but I'm sure the idea has been put out there. I have some thoughts, and
We'll save that for next time.
always looking for an excuse to watch Jaws again.
Yeah. Scott, thanks for hanging with us for a bit. Is there anything that you want to talk about or promote since you are on a microphone?
I really got nothing. This is just a real honor to think about a movie because I don't watch a lot of movies. So to sit down with Dan the other day and watch this was a big deal.
And also, Scott sat down with me to watch Groundhog Day in
That's
preparation
true.
for the
Yes.
Groundhog Day episode.
I'm
so
in the background.
That's
all the time.
right.
It's really great to have you involved any way we can get you involved.
I'm here.
And
Mostly my involvement is I listen to this show and I'm like, what the hell are these people thinking?
These people being your flesh and blood.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
my older and younger brother.
I
What are they
get it.
talking about?
It's bonkers. I just I'll text Dan. I'll be like, "What is happening in your brain that you had this insanely amazing idea?"
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I don't ask anymore, but I'll put in a pitch then for Scott. You can catch Scott on the YouTube and Amazon Prime series Really Dough.
Yeah,
That's true.
And
Yeah, we didn't talk about Scott's existence in the pizza world, but you can find out for yourself. Go to scottspizzatours.com and sliceouthunger.org, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So check those out. 'cause they're
Scott's
pretty
Pizza
great.
Tours on Instagram is a good way to see what's up.
Yeah.
Later
And-
today, you might see. Well, you won't hear this for a few days, but you might see a couple of us eating a slice of pizza at some point.
Oh, it's bound to happen.
wow, yeah, we've never eaten pizza together in Seattle,
Is that
No?
true?
except for pizza that you've made here.
Oh, okay.
Scott.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Loophole. But thank you to all of our listeners. If you can take
Yeah.
the time to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or however else you like to listen to the show, that'd be really great. Subscribe. Dan, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I have nothing more to share right now. I look forward to talking more about Jaws next week.
By the way, this episode was sponsored in part by Palmer Video.
Yeah.
So thanks to
Palmer-
Palmer Video.
Thank you. Yes, they've retroactively sponsored us.
Wow. That's the first time anyone's mentioned Palmer Video in a very, very long
And
time.
West Coast Video. Wow.
West Coast Video. Hey, those are great days. One of my favorite jobs.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for
All right.
listening.
Thank you for joining us, and you'll hear us next week.
Another sparkling day. Just sparkling. Sweet Sierra morning, California bliss. Mother Nature's feeling great when she creates a day like this. I guess we're kinda spoiled, it's like this every day. Mother Nature's kinda saved us as her favorite item.